Hello and welcome. Good to be with you again. I hope you all had a blessed and happy Easter. I know it's been a difficult Holy Week and we've been separated from each other, but I hope that the services that we shared in over the course of last week were a blessing to you. And now we enter into what is known as Easter Tide. And I thought that I would celebrate Easter Tide this year by getting my fishing pole out. I showed this to you not too long ago at the church, many of you. Get my fishing pole out and get out my lures. One of my favorite lures. This is one of my favorites here, a couple of my favorites. Um, these little lures that look like fish. Um, they're deadly to fish. They work very well. And I do assure all of you that I do practice catch and release. I really uh, enjoy fishing just for the sake of going out and having a good time and enjoying the outdoors, and certainly catching fish is a big part of that. But most of the time, I release them. So I've got my lures, my fishing pole. The next thing I've got to do is go out into my barn and get my favorite fishing net. I mentioned that in a previous message to you that I have to kind of piece it back together every year because it's so old and kind of worn out. I'm going to take a look at it in just a minute. But I want to just talk to you because many people have been discouraging me from going fishing. My youngest daughter said, "Oh, Dad, the water is way too high. You shouldn't go out fishing. You're not going to catch anything." And my neighbor saw that I was getting my fishing pole out, and he hollered across the road to me, and he said, "Nate, you're going fishing? Water's way too swift, moving way too fast. I know where you're going. Water's way too swift up there. Too much water right now," he said. And then somebody, not the other day, actually said the water was too cold. And I thought, gee, is there any particular time of year that's perfect to go fishing? Sometimes it's too low, sometimes the water is too high, sometimes it's too warm, sometimes it's too cold. A lot of people doubting that I'm going to catch anything. But I'm going to go anyway. I'm sure many of you have doubts in your life. Maybe you're experiencing some doubts right now. I know many people are really getting discouraged and having some doubts if this virus, this pandemic we're in will ever really end. And I know people really have some doubts about their faith as well. And I guess one of the things I'd like to talk to you about is that word doubt. This weekend, during our service this weekend, we're going to be reading the Gospel of John, and the piece of the Gospel near the very end where Jesus comes back to his disciples to be with them after his resurrection. He talks with them, and all the disciples are there except for one. And of course, that disciple who's missing is Thomas. And we come to know good old Thomas as Doubting Thomas. And Thomas kind of gets a bad rap in my book. I think he often is kind of villainized a little bit because of his doubts. But he may be the disciple that's more like us than any of the others. He expresses his doubts that Jesus had come back, and he expresses his doubts that he's really not going to believe in Jesus until he actually sees him and touches the wounds, and knows that it's him before he's going to really believe. Many of us experience doubts in our faith, and just a couple things I'd like to share with you before I go fishing. One is about doubt is that doubt is a part of our faith, and Jesus understands our doubts. That's really important to know that. One of the ways we know that is Jesus' response to Thomas. If you read the gospel, which I believe is in, chapter 20, I believe, you'll recognize that Jesus doesn't get mad. He doesn't get upset. He doesn't belittle Thomas for his doubts. Instead, he comes back and patiently shows Thomas exactly what he needed to see to encourage him to continue on in his faith in him. I think that's really important for us all to understand, that Jesus doesn't get mad at our doubts. He understands our doubts, and I believe that at times when we have doubts, Jesus will show us things in our life to help us have a better understanding of our faith if we take the time to do so. I think one of the best ways to overcome our doubts is to pray gratefully, because in our gratitude, we come to recognize the many ways in which Jesus has blessed us. And I think that's one way that Jesus helps us to overcome our doubts. The other thing I'd like to say to you is that doubt isn't something that we should somehow push out of our lives and say that it has no place. First of all, doubt is a part of being human and it's a part of our faith journey. But I want to say this to you as well. Some pastor a long time ago when I was in seminary told me this, that doubt is the ants in the pants of faith. Doubt is the ants in the pants of faith. What does that mean? Well, doubt gets us moving. It gets us to move. It gets us to start to look and to look a little bit closely at things that perhaps we doubt. Great example of that, of course, is the story of Abram and Sarah, or Abraham and Sarah, as they became known. At one point in the story of Abraham and Sarah, God comes to them, particularly to Sarah, and says that she's going to have a child. Now, Sarah is a very, very old woman, and Abraham is a very, very old man. So, in response to what God says to them, their response is to laugh. They laugh out of a sense of just disbelief. They laugh out of a sense of not understanding how this could possibly happen. They laugh out of the ridiculousness of the suggestion that they could have children at their ages. They laugh for a lot of reasons. And certainly we could sum up their laughter as doubt. But the important thing is to recognize that it didn't stop them from continuing on in their journey with God. Sarah indeed did have a child. And she indeed became a wonderful mother to that child as well. And so I guess the message there is that despite our doubts, despite how we might interpret something God has done in our life as something that's unbelievable or even beyond belief, the story of Sarah and Abraham teaches us that despite our doubts, we just keep going. We just keep going. I think we should recognize our doubts, and particularly our faith, as not necessarily adjectives, but as verbs, particularly the word faith. It's something to be lived, and doubt is to be experienced. It's something that we do, and it has its ups and its downs. Many of us have been watching TV here. My daughter and I have been watching TV here about the virus and how it's had its ups and downs in certain communities where it's gone up and then it's kind of peaked and then come down a little bit. And of course, the hope is that it will continue to come down. Our faith journey is very much like that. It's a series of ups and downs, and doubt is a part of that. So we shouldn't be discouraged when we have doubt any more than we are discouraged in our faith. We should just keep going. Despite the doubt, despite what you might experience, just remember, Jesus understands your doubts. And the message, of course, is to just keep going despite the doubts. So with that said, I'm going to get my fishing pole and my favorite lures here, and I'm headed off to Bingham to one of my favorite fishing spots. So wish me luck. God bless. Take care.